So I'm going to show you the mug that I made for the other section of ceramics as well, because it's kind of more like a tumbler, which is sort of fun. So it's taller and skinnier, but I did kind of the same technique where I like that little kind of creased edge, and then I've got this little glaze catcher foot, and I made this kind of concave, and then I kind of flared out the lip a little bit, and I did completely different textures on that. So when you pull the handle, you want your mug to be kind of leather hard, right? So I can't squish it and bend it anymore. It's a nice consistency for pulling and attaching a handle. But it's still pretty, malleable. Like I can go in and do a little cleanup on here. So that really is ideal. There's two different ways to pull a handle. The first way is to pull it directly off of your mug. So I would attach it where I wanted it, and I would hold the mug like this and actually pull the handle right off of it. That is a little bit more of an advanced technique. I want Ceramics 2 to try that. If they've never tried that, I want you to try it because I prefer to do it that way, but it takes a little bit more skill and knowledge. The second way is to pull a handle and then set it on a board and let it set up a little bit, like get a little bit drier so that it holds its shape, and then attach it. So I'll show you how to do that. I probably will have to do that first, and then at the very end of class actually attach it, because you want it to dry a little bit. So I'm going to go put it in the fan over on the other side of the room. Okay, before you attach your handle, which is what I'm going to do first, to the actual mug, you want to make sure that your mug is cleaned up in the way that you want it to be cleaned up, because it's a lot easier to do that before you attach the handle. So here's a method of cleaning. I'm going to take a little sponge and I'm going to wring it out pretty good. I don't want it to be dripping wet. And I'm just going to kind of go around and get rid of any finger marks and get rid of any sharp edges that might exist on the rim. We don't want our lip to be scraping up against any sharp edges when we drink out of it. Like right here would be an example, although that's where I'm going to put the handle, so I'm not too concerned about that. And then I'm going to take this and I'm really going to clean up the inside. There's a lot of little finger marks and tool marks in there. This is a very damp sponge. It's not dripping with water, it's just damp. The last thing you want right now is to saturate your piece with a bunch of water. You're really just kind of cleaning the surface. And you don't have to go for completely smooth either. That's not the goal. The goal really is just cleaned up looking. And then I put that little texture in the bottom, and that'll be fun when we're glazing it to see what happens. This is the area that I really want to clean up quite a bit. I still kind of like that texture, the tool in my finger, but I want to clean it up just a little bit. And this edge for sure. You might even want to get in there with a tool and do a little cleaning. So like I can still see my my scoring marks here, so I'm going to get in here with a little wooden tool and just get rid of that. These little details, this is really what makes your piece unique and special and finished looking. And as you advance in your years making clay work, you're going to get better and better at really creating those details. It's really what will make or break your piece. And trained ceramic artists or people that have been working with clay for a long time, we kind of can spot the difference between intentional, unfinished look and just someone that really doesn't know how to finish something. All right, and I don't want any kind of bumps or scuttle marks on the bottom unless they're intentional. So I'm really going to go in and clean up this space here. A little bit more water and get rid of any goobers. I can use my finger too if I need to. And if you don't want that brush kind of spongy texture, you can let it dry for a second and then put some other texture on it. And this is where, if you wanted to, you could sign it. I think I'm going to wait till I put the handle on to sign it. So I feel like that's pretty cleaned up. If I wanted to do any more texturizing on the outside, I could, you know, just for fun, maybe some extra little, I don't know, lines, movement here and there. Kind of fun. And ask yourself, is it done? Do I need something else? Remember, every texture mark you put in here becomes an interesting glaze detail. And then this is dry enough that I could even go in with my finger and just get rid of those sponge marks. All right, so first step in making a pulled handle. Put this aside. Now, if you're making more than one, which I recommend, if you're making handles that you're going to set up on a board, it's a good idea to make a few so that you can choose the best one. So I'll probably make maybe pull like 3 or 4 handles today. Wedge it up. Wedge the whole piece of clay, and then we'll divide it into different sections. If you can, I would grab a piece of clay that you've never worked with before to do this part instead of using a used piece of clay, because when you're pulling on it, you're really putting a lot of stress on those clay particles, so it's best if they're really compressed and kind of fresh. Okay, so I kind of like to have, I'm going to look at my mug just so I know how much clay to grab. Maybe like a little handful. Most of it you won't use. Most of it will end up cut off. And then I just do a little bit of compressing of each one. Roll it on the table. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is make a carrot shape. So, a nice oil. Get it round first. But then I'm going to make one end of it pointed like a carrot. And that's going to be the skinnier end of your handle. Before you pull your handles, it might be a good idea to go into your kitchen and look at handles, the mugs in your kitchen cabinet. Just think about the features of a handle. Of course, the thicker part of the mug handle is going to be where you're holding it, and it's going to be towards the top of the mug. Don't roll this part too skinny because you're going to be pulling this skinnier. Okay, just start off with like a basic carrot shape. And for a handle that you're pulling on the mug itself, you don't want all this extra clay, so you're actually going to cut off at an angle. You're going to cut this like that. And then I like to clean this up just by kind of pushing on that cut edge, maybe even smoothing it out a bit. Okay, this is going to be the surface that you attach. So now you have this little carrot with a beveled edge. All right, so for the handles that you're pulling and putting on a board, you're not going to cut that part off because you need to hold something when you're pulling it. It's not going to be attached to anything. press those ends, get a nice round coil started, and then make that carrot shape. And don't make it too skinny. Okay, so there's my one carrot. And you could pull handles to anything really, not just mugs, but vases, teapots, larger handles. And this is really only one technique, but it is a pretty common technique. Most potters I know make handles like this. Okay, bigger carrot. That could maybe be, I'll save that one for my tall mug. Do I have any questions so far? Ceramics too, this is all review for you. You've probably had plenty of practice doing this, although it wouldn't hurt to practice again, right? All right, and there's my third carrot. So I'm going to put those aside for now, and I'm just going to pull this on the actual mug. All right, so you need a bucket of water for this. And now we need to decide, where am I putting my handle? Well, typically the top part of the handle goes right underneath the rim. So I'm going to figure out if I want it on this side or this side. I think it makes more sense to be right here. And you're going to want to put the bevel so that it's going to arch up and come down. So you don't want to put it like this, right? You want to flip it around and put it right here. So I'm going to decide where that's going to go, and then I'm just going to make a mark. Then I'm going to score that up pretty good, right where I think it's going to attach. Not with a fork, with a needle tool or something sharp. So I went in and scored it about 4 times right there. And then I'm going to follow my eye, and about I don't know, 3/4 of an inch up from the base is where you want to put the bottom part. So you're going to score that too. Perfect leather hard mug right here. And then you're going to go in here, and you're only going to score this end. This end's going to get chopped off. We don't know where that's going to end up yet, and it's going to get stretched out. So I'm going to score this up pretty good. Now we want to create kind of like a glue. So we're going to put some water on here, and then we're just going to let it sit for a second and kind of soak in. So it's not slippery, it's more glue-like. So give that just a second to kind of gum up a bit. You can blow on it, fan it. Having a fan in ceramics is sometimes handy, especially if you're trying to dry things a little quicker. You just have to be careful that you're watching it and rotating it and not letting it dry too fast in one side. Other ceramic artists have been known to put their pieces in the kiln, really low temperature too, to dry them out fast. I've done all of these things. Little hacks of the trade. Okay, so it's pretty much ready. You can see it's not glistening anymore. It's just kind of soaked in. This is the most important part about pulling a handle on your mug, is sticking it and you kind of jiggle it a little bit so that it sort of zippers onto your scored marks, and then you let it sit. You let it sit for a couple minutes because it has to like suction itself on there. Because I'm about to flip it this way and pull on it. So if it's not really suctioned on there well, it's going to come right off. So I'm going to put this aside for a second, maybe prop it up on something, and then I'm going to make my other handles. So you got to be set up for this part. You need a board or some piece of cardboard or something. No paper for this. You want it to stick to the board. So you got your board all ready to go. You've got your bucket and you've got your carrot. So this is why all of this clay we're not using for the handle. It's our handle for holding the handle. So you're going to hold it like this, And then this is really messy. I have to be careful, my laptop's right here. And you're literally gonna put this carrot right here in your hand. And you're gonna just kind of try to pinch, and you're gonna pull, but you're not really pulling hard. You're just kind of like letting it slide down. And then you pull, I don't know, maybe like 4 times, and then you rotate it, and then you go on the other side. If you don't rotate, it's gonna be uneven. So this is what my hand looks like when it's wrapped around. It's sort of had that little opening there. You don't want any friction. That's why you've got this bucket of water there. And you also don't want it to get too thin. You think about the form that you're making it for. It has to fit the form. So if you have a chubby pot, then maybe your handle needs to be a little thicker. If you have a skinny tall pot, then maybe your handle needs to be a little thinner. And of course you're maintaining the thickness here, and it's tapering as you go down. You can kind of see it's still shaped like that carrot, which is why we made it into a carrot in the first place, because we wanted it to be thinner at the bottom. This is nice plastic clay, which means it stretches. Don't go too crazy or it's going to break. Okay, so this is pretty good. Now here's the trick. You don't want to touch this again very much after you make it, because you're just going to ruin it. You're going to gum it up and it's going to be all fingerprinted. So dip your hand in the water, take this hand, slide your hand underneath it, use this big blob of clay to stick it to the board, and then just let it sit there. Okay, so that's, let me put it on the side. So now you're not going to use all of that. I'm going to teach you how to kind of cut it off. But that's what you're going for right there. Okay, so I'm going to make all 3 of them. So now you want to assess this and say, well, this is my mug. I'm not going to pick that up right now. How big is this? I'm probably only going to use from like here to here. It's a pretty good size. Maybe I want a different shape. So for this one, I'm going to try a different shape. Maybe I'll put a finger mark in or something different. Don't rush this. This takes time and patience and practice. It will probably not be as easy as I'm making it look right now, because I've done this a lot. Production potters get really, really fast at this. In fact, some production potters just slip cast their handles so that they can just make a cast and pull them out of the mold and pop them on their piece. Okay, I'm going to just pinch that bottom part off. I don't need it. Okay, so here's a fun little detail. If you want a different shape, you can take your thumb and you can just run it down the middle a number of times until you get a little groove in it. So if your mug has some like geometric details or little grooves or something, or a flat section, this might be a fun handle for you. Okay, dip your hand in, rotate it, don't touch your other handle, pinch it down, and just let it stay there. This is why you have to have your carrots all rolled out, because your hands are gonna be just wet and messy. Okay, how can I alter this one? Let's make this one thicker. Try not to pinch too hard or you're gonna have like a little dent in your handle. And if it gets too long, you know I'm not gonna use that, just get rid of it. This one had a little bit too much. So when you see me come up, I'm not touching it when I come up. I'm only touching it when I pull down. You're using gravity here. Okay, so we want this one to be a little thicker and maybe not as rectangular shaped. So maybe I can spend a little time kind of like shaping the sides so that it's more round. Okay, put my hand in, flip it over. This one's a little shorter, so I'm going to do that. And then I'm just, whoop. Oh man, okay, I'm going to put it back in the bucket here. Just get that shape back. Stick it, and then just very delicately move this down like that. So now I have 3 pretty neat looking handles shapes to choose from for that one mug. Put those aside. Don't wrap them up. Do not put plastic over these wet pieces. You will totally ruin the handle. You're just going to let it air dry until you're ready to attach. Once they're leather hard, you can wrap them up. Okay, so here is, I'm going to clean my hands off with a paper towel here so I'm not messing up my mug. Any questions? Okay. All right, so this is, how do we know this is really attached? Well, you just pull on it and it doesn't feel like it's coming off, then you're pretty good. So you want to hold your mug, you kind of cradle it underneath like that. And Ceramics 1, if you want to try this, go for it. Like, I don't want to discourage you. It's just a little bit more challenging. Okay, get it wet first. Make sure you're not really going to yank on it. And then this is just a little bit more of a delicate process here because you've got the mug in the way. Make sure you're pulling it straight down and not off to the side. And I'm going to confess that I have a certain handle that I put on my mugs that is almost a complete rip-off of Ayumi Hori's handles. I love her handles, so I kind of taught myself how to do her. She has this like cool thumbprint thing that she does. I don't think I could show you on this because this ridge is in the way, but okay, so if you're noticing that the handle is kind of starting to come attached, just squish it back on there. Maybe put a little pressure there. And I'm going to have to be gentler because I can tell it's kind of coming off. Okay, I'm getting close. And I put that little thumbprint in there, which is kind of fun. So I just went like this, boop. I'm finding too, if you guys ever hear me making sound effects to actions I do, please tell me, because that's something you start doing as a parent. I don't know, it's like you become this more animated version of yourself. So I just noticed I did it and I was embarrassed because I went boop, which is something I would do for my son. I'd go boop, bop, boop, stuff like that. So just see, Miss Granger, you're making those noises again. Okay, so I think it's kind of the width I want it to be. Now here's the trick. This is how we do it. You want to flip it like this, and you want to get your hand wet again, right? Because you're trying not to put your finger marks in. And then I'm going to just slightly push in with the underside of my fingers to give it an arch. And then I'm going to move my hand. I'm going to do this in slow-mo. Move my finger up. And then I'm going to find that other part that I scored. And I'm not going to score it. I don't need to score it. It's really wet clay. All I need to do is make sure it's lined up before I squish it on there. And then I'm going to squish it down right there. And then you can take a needle tool and you can kind of cut off that extra bit. You know, you can clean that up later once it dries. And then you're going to look on the side here. And you're going to ask yourself, is that really the shape I want it? If you want to mess with it a little bit, you can. Not too much. With a wet finger, just kind of tweak it a bit. Maybe just kind of curve it up that way, a smidge. Maybe push that down a smidge. Okay. And that looks pretty good to me. So now I can't touch it. I have to let it get set up and before I clean it up because it's way too wet and I do not want finger marks in it. Okay? So at the end of class, I'll show you how to clean that up. All right. I'm going to go wash my hands, but before I do I have any questions? If you could use your voice because I can't touch the computer right now to look at the chat. Sort of half hidden by my video. Okay, it's 10:57. I'd like you to work on your mugs and come back at 11:25 to wash your hands, and you're going to take a whip of your piece. I'll change it to a whip and we'll just see where we're at the end of class. Do not stress about finishing this up, and I'll show you how to clean up your mug. I also need to show you guys how to attach these if you do it this way. So yeah, and I'll show you that at 11:20, and I'll go dry these. And I think I might have to attach 2 handles on my mug. Or take that one off, possibly.